Welcome to 20 Minutes with Mike, brought to you by Legal Ease, the ultimate guide on how to survive a law practice. The Chastain Law Office of Gold River, California, and Barking Frogs, your best source for race swag. Go bigger and louder. Now here's your host, Mike Chastain.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us today. We have a great show on hand for you. We're going to be talking about running a data-driven business. So in the little teasers, I talked about very quickly, taking inventory. And really, when you think about what data is just another word for inventory. What does your business have going for it? So let's get started. You know, when I was in the heyday of my adventure racing career, I often was not only the team captain, but also the navigator. And just so that you know, when we talk about navigating in adventure racing, we're talking about map and compass. We're not talking about GPS. We're not talking about Siri giving you directions. We're talking about using an old fashioned compass and a paper map. And one of the things, especially when we talk about longer races that are 3, 5, 10 days long, one of the questions that your teammates always going to want to know, one of the questions that you're going to want to be able to answer is, how long is it going to take us to do each leg? Whether you're biking or paddling or trekking or climbing or rappelling, how long is it going to take each leg? And part of the mastery of being a good navigator is to be able to give realistic estimates. So in order to give realistic estimates, you got to have data. You got to know, what is the terrain like? Are we going to be on a road? Or are we going to be bushwhacking through the jungle? Are we going to be on a flat area, or are we going to be climbing, a 3,000 foot ascent? I mean, I remember one time doing a race in the Yosemite area where we literally hike-a-biked our bikes on our shoulders up 2,500 vertical feet over a mountain. That's a whole lot slower than pedaling down a road, right? What's the weather going to be like? Is it going to be raining? Is it going to be dark? Everything happens slower in the dark. How fatigued is your team? The fact that at the beginning of the race, you might be able to hike 3.5 miles an hour. At the end of the race, you might be only able to hike, even on a flat road, 2 miles an hour, just because everybody is so tired. Are you going to need to sleep during that leg? So there's all kinds of decisions that need to be made, because you got to know, are you going on a 2 hour trek, a 10-hour trek, a 24-hour trek, a 48-hour trek? That will determine how much food and clothing and water you need to take. So these are important things. These are data points. And I know that, I've told the story, and you can look it up uh, in other blogs that I've done. But at one point, when we were in Canada doing a race called the Raid of the North out on Haida Gwaii, we had estimated that it was going to be a 17-hour hike, and it wound up being 54 hours. So there's a big difference. And part of that was navigational nativity. I just didn't quite understand the terrain. And some of it was just plain bad luck. We had a cloud descend on us, and we had low visibility. And so, these are all other things that you can't necessarily account for. But business is not that different. Um, there's an old saying that goes, and I really have no idea who to attribute it to, because I've heard it from a number of sources. But there's, you know, where you want to go, or where you want your business to be, where you think your business is, and then where your business actually is. And when we talk about, where you want your business to be, do you want to have financial security? Do you want it to be, one lawyer, two lawyers, 10 lawyers, 100 lawyers? Do you want to be grossing 100,000, or 500,000, or a million, or 10 million? What is it that you want your firm to be doing? So, that's kind of like the map, right? We know that we're here, we know where we want to go. The next part of that is where you think you are. And my experience has been that most people who are not relying on data, not really taking inventory, uh, believe that they're one place when they really are someplace else. And I've certainly done that in navigating, where you kind of lose track of what's going on. You think you're in one place, and you're looking around and nothing's making sense to where you think you are on the map, and you realize that you're just plain lost. And the rule of thumb in navigating and adventure racing is that if you get lost, the rule is to go back to the last known place that you were, the last place you knew where you actually were. And that would be a data point. Okay. We know that, this crossroad, this is where that is on the map. We're absolutely positive about that, as opposed to just keep wandering around and hoping for the best. Maybe you get lucky. Most of the time, you just get more and more lost and waste more and more time. Well, business is the same way. A lot of people think they're in one place, and it turns out that they really are in a different place because they don't know. They're not tracking. They're not really paying attention to what's going on. They're just sort of floating around. I felt like that for many, many years when I first opened up a firm. I just felt like I was in a boat, and I was just, being blown around, and wherever I wound up, if cases came in, great. If money came in, great. And so I would sit around and I would just stress about, hey, how am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to pay myself? I can't get employees because I had no idea whether I'd be able to pay them. And when I changed from, just floating around to actually being a data driven law firm, that's when everything changed for me. That was basically when I built a sail and a rudder, and I could actually guide my business where I wanted it to go. See, I always had a pretty good idea of where I wanted to go. But in all honesty, I was looking at a map without a compass. I had no idea which way which way to go, and I had no data points to help me out. So that's what I want to talk a little bit about: is how do you become a data-driven law firm or other business? Or I'm going to talk about it being as a law firm because that's the industry that I know. But everything I'm going to talk about really applies to virtually every other kind of business. The terminology might be a little bit different, but it really does apply to virtually every other business. Now, just recently, as a little plug, I am on the board of the small and solo business division of the Sacramento County Bar. And, we try to work with other small and solo firms to help them through some of these issues. And one of our members got a great person to give a talk, a woman by the name of Brooke Lively. She wrote the book Panic to Profit. And what she talked about were the six key factors, or six key numbers that she wants to track in a law firm. Now, I'll tell you, I don't disagree with any of the things that she said. I'm going to translate some of them because I use different key performance indicators, KPIs, but I think it gets us to the same place. And so I'm going to talk about the ones that she talked about, and then I'm going to translate them into the ones that I use. And hopefully you'll find this to be pretty useful. So the number one, and I don't want to speak on her behalf or say that these were necessarily in order. But the first one that she talked about was cash on hand. What was your cash flow forecast? So in other words, how much money you got in the bank? And how much money do you project that you'll have next week, next month, 3 months? It's probably hard to go out more than 3 months. But if you can go out 6 months, what do you project? And what is your goal? Are you trying to get to seven figures? Or are you, just a very small firm and you just like to bring in 100,000? Okay. So you gotta set your parameters the way you want to go. For me, that's an important metric in how much money we have in the bank. The way we do it, we use the profit first system, and I would absolutely encourage anyone who's running a business to read Mike Michalowicz's Profit First. I may go over that in a different blog, but you got to read Mike Michalowicz's Profit First. It just changed the way we do business. But one of the things that I did based on his guidance was I set aside what I call a holding account, but basically it's a rainy day fund. Okay. And so anytime we have extra money over and above, payroll and profit and all of those other things, and profit's already built to our system. Anytime I have any extra money, I put it in the holding account for that rainy day. And I will tell you that during COVID, having money in that account was critical in our ability to make payroll, especially in the early days when we really didn't know what was going to happen. So cash on hand, how much money do you have cash on hand? You really should know that. I look at my bank account every single day. That may be a little obsessive, but you absolutely should always know how much money you have in the bank account. The number two thing that she said, and again, I don't want to say that these are necessarily in order of priority, but this is the order that she gave them, was marketing and sales. And she said it was the number of sales calls. Now, in our world, what we call those is leads. How many leads do you have coming in? How often is the phone ringing? This information is really critical because it's going to tell you how many clients are potentially are going to come in. It's going to tell you whether your marketing is working. It's going to tell you a lot of really, really critical information. And the big part of what is important with all of these KPIs is not necessarily the raw number, but the trends. Did all of a sudden your leads just drop off? Did you go from, so like our office, we do somewhere between 90 and 100 leads a month pretty consistently. This month, February, today's the 22nd, we've had 77 leads. Okay. You need to know that. It's important to know that. So that's a little on the low side, but not bad. Not bad. It's a short month, so we still have 6 days. So we'll probably wind up with 85 to 90 leads. But if all of a sudden that drops down to 60, we know that there's an issue and there's something going on. It also tells you, if you follow the other KPIs I'm going to talk about here in a minute, it also tells you where there's a hole in your bucket, where there's problems. The next thing that she said is team production, work in progress, and how many billable hours. So we do kind of a combination of flat fees and hourly rates. We need our whole team to be doing a certain number of billable hours. It's just, there's just a certain amount of work that needs to be done, right? The boat needs to be rowed. So we track how many billable hours, how much work is in progress, so we can project how much money we are going to get at the end of the month. And so for us, that also entails knowing how much money is in the trust fund. Do we have enough work to keep us busy for the next week, next month, next couple months, next quarter? The fourth thing that she's talked about is case management, net new cases. So that's, for us, that's hires. How many people are hiring? Now, I use a little different from what she suggests. I think something a little simpler. We look at these four main KPIs. How many leads are coming in? Just like she says, marketing and sales. How many of those people that called set appointments? So in other words, how many of those calls were actually good leads? Because if it's a good lead, it's somebody who's going to actually set an appointment to go the next step. And this is also going to measure how good your phone people are. If your phone people are setting, 80% of your qualified leads for appointments, that's really good. And if all of a sudden one month it drops to 60, you need to take a look. Is there a problem with your leads, or has something happened with your phone person? Okay. It gives you a way to immediately identify where there might be a problem. How many of those people show? How many of the appointments that are set or show? Now before I got involved in measuring things, I used to think everybody showed, and that was just fanciful thinking. we run about 85 to 90% show rate. Now, to me, this is kind of low hanging fruit because there's a lot of ways that you can improve your show rate. Think about your dentist. They call you a million times, they send you text messages to make sure that you make your appointment. If you just act like your dentist, people will show up to your appointments. But you want to know if all of a sudden your show rate drops, maybe there's a problem with your follow through. Most of our follow through is automated. So if our show rate drops, the first thing we look at is our automation working? Maybe there's been a problem, or maybe we need to update it or change it. And then your hire rate, how many people you're converting. You need to know for you what is good. Is it 25%? Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Different industries have different things. Like PI probably converts higher because the people don't have to fork out any money. On higher end cases, more expensive cases for us, the higher rate's going to be a little bit lower than on less expensive types of cases. You need to know what your industry is and where you are, and then track it and monitor it and figure out where do you stand. Is your higher rate gone up, or worse, has it gone down? A few years ago, we had like a really, really bad month and very, very few hires, very little money coming in. And we immediately took a look. How are our leads? Where our leads were pretty good. How were our sets? Well, our sets were really good. Our percentages were really solid. How many of them showed up? That number was really good. But our hire rate went through, just went through the floor. It was horrible. And so then we sat back and we took a look at what happened. And what I realized happened is that we had gotten off of our script. We had, you should have a sales script of some sort. You should know what your presentation is going to look like, the things that you're going to say, and you want it to be consistent. Every case is unique, but you want it to be consistent so that you can measure, has something gone wrong? And what I found is that it was mostly me. I went off script. I just got a little big for my britches. I started thinking that, I could just wing it. And our higher rate, just dropped off the chart. I immediately went back to our script, and you know what? The higher rate went right back to where it normally was. And that was a huge learning process for me, is realize one, I'm susceptible to the problems too. And, it's easy to get off course. So a lot like when you're navigating, if you're out in the wilderness and it's pouring rain and it's pitch black and you're trying to figure out where you want to go, you really need to rely on your compass. These numbers help you a great deal. Now, two others that she talked about, profit planning. So your budget versus your actual, what do you expect your costs to be, and are you meeting that? Just because I have literally 2 minutes left, I will just tell you that it's really important to look at where you're spending your money. Your profit is going to be more about how much you spend than it is going to be about how much you bring in. And beware of the little nickel and dime things that are not little nickel and dimes. You get on some subscription for $50 a month, and it just doesn't seem like a big deal, but you realize that you've got 5 of those and now you're at $250 a month. And what is that? That's, a couple grand a year. Or, worse, there is such a thing as overhead creep. And so you just need to be really careful and mindful and review that periodically. And then the last thing is, ideal ratios between various things. Now, Richard James has always advocated that your payroll should never be more than 45% of your gross income. And that includes the owner's payroll. It's not the owner benefit, not the profit, but the owner's salary should be at 45%. Now, Blake Lively said that she thought it shouldn't be more than 33%. You need to figure out what's comfortable for you and what makes sense for you. The key point here is not necessarily the raw number, but the trends. Once you decide where you want to go, can you stay on that trend? Can you stay either getting better or at least at the same place so that you can start to see everything work. Once, if you see there's a downturn, now is the time to make a correction before things get really serious. And that's really the whole point of a data driven business, is it gives you, with KPIs, with key performance indicators that you can keep an eye on, a variety of simple numbers that you can track, and you can see if things are starting to go south. If they're starting to go south, you need to pick it up early enough so that you can make the corrections. All right, everybody, our 20 minutes is up. I hope this has been useful for you. I will tell you that it made all the difference in the world in practicing law for me, running a business, going from a business that was just struggling to being profitable. Because we keep our eye on the dials, we look at the KPIs, we know what our numbers should be, and we keep track of those. So everybody, I hope this has been helpful. I wish you all the best, and just remember, be grateful for what you have and be willing to work for what you want. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time.